Hey guys, this is Anurag Jain, developer advocate with Thalas. In this part today, which is the part 3 of this video series of adding compliance to web applications without changing code, we are going to look into dockerizing our applications. In last two videos we created two different applications. One is the UI layer using React and Express, and another was the API layer using Spring Boot. Plus we have been using MongoDB to persist our information. So in this small video today we are going to put everything within Docker using a docker compose.yaml file. You can do the same using Kubernetes or Docker Swarm or any other orchestration tool you prefer. But for the sake of this demo, I'm going to just use Docker compose.yaml to deploy all the three components, which is the Mongo database, the API layer, and the UI layer. And then we will move towards adding another container to the mix, and that will be the Thales data protection gateway container. But yeah, that's for next video. But today we are just going to deploy the two applications and the database, and they are the exact same applications: the React UI app that we created in part 2 and the Spring Boot app that we created in part 1 of the series. So I've just made minor corrections to the application because we will be deploying within Docker. I will come to these corrections later, but first let's see what's there in the docker compose.yaml file. In Docker Compose YAML file, basically I'm creating three different services. One is the MongoDB. I'm using the Mongo image from Docker Hub and the container name of MongoDB. The port I'm using is 27017, and I'm using a initialization file which looks something like this. So I'm creating a collection with name DPG with credentials root, and it's a read write collection. So I'm I'm creating MongoDB with that initialization. Then I'm creating another service which is front end, and that is our UI layer. It's going into the temp UI folder. That's the name of my web application, the front end part, and it is invoking the Docker file within that UI application. So this is the Docker file it is running. I'm using the base image of Node, and then I'm copying the app and the package.json files, and then I'm running npm install with force flag. Finally, I'm just removing the cache and recreating it and running the same command, which is npm run dev and exposing port 3000. So I'm doing the pretty much the same thing, except I'm doing that from within Docker file, and then I'm mapping 3000 port with 3000. That's my UI port, and 3001 with 3001. That's my Express.js port. And the last piece to it is the container for the API, and that is the Spring Boot application that we created. So again, I'm invoking the Docker file, and this Docker file is it's more like Java kind of Docker file. So I'm using I'm using Maven to compile the code, and once the build is done, ambient clean package is run, I'm using OpenJDK to use this build, which is created with this name, and run a java minus jar with that, and then I'm exposing 8080 because that's where my backend API application is running, and I'm mapping port 8080 with 8080 port itself. I've commented this. We will come to it later in the next video. And then I'm just using bridge as the network driver for our Docker application. So with this, I'm just going to run Docker Compose up. It will take around a minute to come up because it will be pulling all the images and everything. But once this is done, I have my Docker for desktop running here, and let me pull that. I should be able to see all the images and all the containers, popping up over here. Let's give it, few more minutes. Yeah. So see, DPG demo one was my application. API was one of the servers. Front end was one of the servers. So it has done all the tasks. It has basically used Maven to build the project, and then Java minus jar command using OpenJDK to run that backend API. Then for the front end, it has used npm commands to first install all the dependencies, and then npm run dev Basically, the run dev is the command that is going to run our client app, the UI, and our server app, which is the Express service, both. And finally, it will also run MongoDB in our container environment itself. So before seeing the actual demo, just I would like to show some of the changes that I made to the UI and the backend to suit the containerized environment. So instead of using localhost 8080, I'm using API. So this is the service name. This is the service name that actually maps to the backend Spring Boot API, which is running on 8080. So in my Express code, I have replaced localhost 8080 with API 8080 in both the calls. And in my Spring Boot app, to talk to MongoDB, I was earlier using localhost here, and again, I replaced that with the service name. So for Mongo service, our service name is MongoDB. So these are the only two changes that I did on my application side to make sure that they behave well within the containerized environment. And I believe at this point we should have all the three services running. Looks good. So let's go to the browser and let's see if this API endpoint works fine. So yes, there's a blank data. Since I mapped my React app to 3000 only, so but now this time it is going within the Dockerized environment, right? So I can now go to user. Let's perform those operations again. Let me add the data, again some random data. I'm just putting some random details here and add data. So again, everything, my application is as is. I just changed some endpoints to map to Docker services instead of the local host earlier, and that's pretty much it. So in this part, we have seen how we can Dockerize the application. In the next part, we will add Thales Cipher Trust Data Protection Gateway and make some configuration changes to Cipher Trust Manager and see if we can use the existing application as is with Cipher Trust Data Protection Gateway to transparently encrypt the data. So yeah, let's I would we would meet again in the next video. Please till then take care, and if you like the video, please do like it or subscribe to our channel. Till then, thank you so much for watching my video again.